Hello everybody, this is Curtis from PSNStores.com, and today we're going to take a look at Shantae Half-Genie Hero. This is out on PlayStation 4 and Vita. It's been out for a couple weeks now. It came out on the 20th. I finished it a few days ago, so I figured I'll have a review up probably around the time this video goes live as well. I really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed pretty much every Shantae game I've played. I've played 3 of them. I haven't played the first one. But I played the other 3, all 3 that are on PlayStation platforms, actually. So we're going to start up a new game. As you saw, it took me a little over 6 hours to finish on my first playthrough. And that's with about, I think it was around 80% completion. So there's still some collectibles I was missing. So after you know, on your first playthrough, you just play Shantae. After you beat it, you can play Shantae Hero Mode. This is replaying the adventure with your main transformations already unlocked. So that's something that, especially if you want to go for like the speedrun trophies and stuff, probably the way you want to go. And then this is, this looks like Risky. I think this is part of the Kickstarter, one of the stretch goals was being able to play as Risky. And this is going to be really interesting because of some things that I'll talk about a little later on. And the way that this game is designed and the kind of abilities that you have in this game compared to some of the other ones. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know when this is coming. This is not available yet. I believe this is coming free to everybody. I don't think it's going to be a paid DLC. But some of the other stretch goals they hit are already in the game. I'll talk about those as well. So we're just going to do... I'll play as regular Shantae. Just for the sake of, you know, there are some returning powers. So if you've played Shantae before, you know, there are some powers that you'll recognize. But there's some new ones too, so at the sake of not spoiling those, I suppose. So, this is the 4th entry of Shantae. Currently on PlayStation platforms, there is Shantae Risky's Revenge Director's Cut. And then there is Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. And then Pirate's Curse actually came out, I believe, earlier this year, and then Director's Cut was last year. Now, this game actually is more in line with, if you remember the DuckTales game that WayForward did a few years back, that kind of graphical style of these like high-res 2D sprites for the characters and enemy design, and then the actual levels are kind of 3D. I think this game looks better than DuckTales did. I thought DuckTales kind of didn't, the 2D 3D elements I didn't think blended all that well, whereas I think this game looks really good, and I think that stuff kind of blends really well. So and the other thing you should note is like these games are connected but very loosely. It's not something that you really need to play the other games to understand, like, this is Shantae, she is a half-genie, and we'll get to that. You know, there's a little bit more to that, you know, but then there's also Risky. She's a pirate. She's kind of Shantae's rival. Basically, there's some other characters that are recurring. But, you know, the stories aren't really, like, super connected or anything like that. It's... They work pretty well as standalone games. But what makes that interesting is... This does take place after Pirate's Curse. And in Pirate's Curse, the game went a pretty different direction compared to other Shantae games, where a lot of Shantae games were based around transformations. And the concept was like, oh, you could transform into a monkey, and then as a monkey you could climb up walls or jump higher, or you could transform into an elephant, and then you could break through barriers. And so in Pirate's Curse, you were basically recovering a lot of... You teamed up with Risky. And you were recovering a lot of her gadgets or abilities, and you were using that. So it played very differently, and it was a pretty interesting, like, structural wise, it was very similar to Shantae, you know, where there's a lot of backtracking, a lot of kind of Metroid-esque, getting an ability to backtrack to a past area to unlock a new place, to get another ability, and so on and so forth. But the way it played was very different, and so it was an interesting kind of new way to play Shantae, I guess. So what's interesting about this game is, as far as story beats go, you know, Shantae has got her half-genie powers back. She is once again a half-genie, which means she can do those transformations again. And so this game actually kind of ignores, in a way, like, you don't really have anything that you had from Pirate's Curse. It's actually much more closer to Risky's Revenge or the original Shantae, where it's based around these different transformations. So it's kind of an interesting, almost soft reboot, if you will, of not really taking into account some of the things that Pirate's Curse introduced, but rather going back to its roots in a way. So the game starts, you have this like dream sequence basically where Shantae finds this like hidden area under Scuttletown and is kind of contacted by someone from the genie world, basically, and it's basically telling her, hey, something really bad is about to happen. You know, there's someone out there who's going to try to be using some sort of power to do a thing, and nothing good is going to come from it. So you're, watch out. You're gonna have to stop it. And then here's Scuttletown. So should look relatively similar if you played other Shantae games. One thing I do like is the kind of, at least in Scuttletown here, how it's kind of cylindrical, I guess, how it kind of rotates around. So let's go talk to the uncle, and then we'll try to get into a level pretty quick. So another crux of this game, the story here, is that your uncle, he's a scientist. He's sort of mad scientist-esque, where he always is working on some weird experiment. He's always doing something, trying to create something new. And the thing he's trying to do in this game is build a device that will basically protect the town. Shantae, as the Half-Genie, she is the town's guardian. But the mayor is never all that satisfied. Even though Shantae, like, through many games now, has done great work and has saved the town over and over again, the mayor is never satisfied, so Shantae always gets fired. And so her uncle is basically trying to develop something that'll just protect the town. And so that whole thing kind of goes awry in a way, but so we gotta try to find Bolo. I think, yeah, he's in the bathhouse. Here we go. So we'll kind of skip through some of this stuff real quick, just so we can get to the game proper. But a lot of the stuff, especially in Scuttletown, is pretty similar to past games. You've got the bathhouse. You can use the water here to heal or restore your MP. A lot of the characters are returning characters as well. Even like the kind of no-named NPCs are pretty much, the same design. They just look a lot nicer, of course. And then we gotta go to the item shop to deliver the receipt. Yep. So we can get the magnet, take it back to the uncle. So the big difference here, and we'll see it as we get into the first stage, is one thing that's been interesting to watch kind of the Shantae games go in this direction is, so if you played Risky's Revenge, what's kind of cool about that game is Scuttletown serves as like the center of the world, and it's kind of the hub, and you can go in any direction. And all the levels, the dungeons, everything, everywhere you go, it's all interconnected. So it's this non-linear, kind of very small scaled down world. But it's very, very Metroid-esque in its progression. But it works really well because even though it's small, like, exploration is really key. It's not, you can kind of go in whatever direction you choose. You get new abilities to unlock new areas, lots of hidden collectibles to find, and it's just a really solidly designed game. And then Pirate's Curse is also pretty similar in that respect, except it's not as interconnected. You actually go to different islands. But those islands still, kind of at their core, the design is still kind of very similar. and then it's not super linear. There are dungeons you can go to, bosses to fight, and things like that. And it still retains a lot of that, I guess, the spirit of Shantae. This game is level-based, and the levels are very linear. There's still backtracking, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's not as... I don't know. I don't think it works as well. I still like the game quite a bit, but I think the reliance on backtracking in this game, especially because there's so few levels, is... I don't think it works as well as it has in prior Shantae games, and that's a little disappointing. Alright, so it's time to head out to Main Street. Main Street is under attack, as has been the case in many Shantae games, so we're going to go to Sky's hatchery. Sky is a friend of ours. She has this bird, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is new to this game. Her bird, Wrench, has the ability to transform into a much larger bird. So we can hop on Wrench's back, and then that will lead us to our level selection. So we'll hop through this real quick and be off to Main Street. So here we go. So we have Scuttle Town Square. That, again, is a place you'll go to. There's item shops there, of course, as you saw. There's even an art gallery for concept art you can unlock. Then we have Main Street. One of the things I do really like about this game, it is very streamlined. And so, as I mentioned, with the linear nature of some of the levels, it's a little disappointing in how it handles that in backtracking and stuff. But one of the good things is, one, like, this game plays really well. And also, as you see the question mark there, that details all the collectibles on a level. And so it's really easy to know, like, if you're missing anything. And if you are, like, how much or what you're missing. So it's really nice, really convenient. Definitely helps when you get to when you get to a point where you're missing only a few things. Alright, so here we go. This is the first stage of Shantae Half-Genie Hero. So we're being attacked by a pirate ship. Wonder who that might be. We've even got this song that plays. I like it. Anyways, so Shantae, her kind of basic attack is her purple hair. She uses this as a whip. It's kind of been in every Shantae game. We can hit these pots for some gems for currency. Sometimes they drop health. You can swim, but currently I don't have any abilities because you can actually go underwater and find different hidden collectibles and abilities that way too. But we'll just take down some of these enemies for now. You can also just dance. Hold down triangle. You can dance. This is actually how you choose your different transformations. Which, again, if you played Shantae before, at least the games that have transformations, that should be pretty familiar to you. And that works okay. There's actually a lot of transformations in this game, and I think one of the things that maybe could have been done better is when you do try to transform. Basically it's mapped to the D-pad. So if you hold down triangle, you have 4 different transformations. But because there's more than 4 transformations, they kind of cycle through. And you can get an ability that will make it go quick, that it'll like cycle faster. But it's kind of the thing of, there's a lot of like stop and go. Sometimes when you're switching between a number of any different transformation. It's a little clunky. I feel like that probably could have been handled a little bit better. It's not a huge deal. but it is something that at least kind of stood out in some instances. So we'll just keep going here. You start the game with two hearts. This game, instead of having, you know, past games, there would be a thing where you would collect a number of heart pieces, and then you would get the next, you get another heart added to your life. In this game, you're just straight up finding hearts. So you're not finding pieces, you're just finding whole pieces of a new life bar, basically, or life heart thing. So that's a little bit different. But again, you know, control-wise, like, this controls totally fine. Like, it plays really, really well. I still had a lot of fun with it. This is the PS4 version. I've not played the Vita version, so I don't know too much about how that plays. I would hope that it's not... I would hope it's fine. So, the levels are kind of split into sections like this, where you'll go through some screens, and then you'll reach a part where this guy will ask you if you want to save. You can save your game. And usually it's like 2 or 3 sections, basically, and most of the time the third section's the boss fight. Some boss fights are new, some are very similar, or returning boss fights. One in particular that kind of stood out, it was a little weird. But in general, boss fights are pretty solid in this game. But the thing that I really want to kind of touch upon here is, as I mentioned, this is a series that has been pretty big on backtracking. A lot of the focus really is the idea of like exploring these different areas, getting abilities, then backtracking to find new places, to unlock new passageways or other secret areas that you couldn't find before. And that has worked really well for the most part. I think Half-Genie Hero, that is one of its, it's one of the things that is not, it's not terrible, but it's definitely a fault of the game there, where there's not a lot of levels. There's only like 6 stages. And because these levels are so linear, you know, in past Shantae games, you would go through kind of some relatively linear environments, but you would find these dungeons, and those would be a little bit more open, and those would be places that you could backtrack to as well. But it's just because this game is so streamlined and so linear, the backtracking feels a bit more egregious here. It feels almost like, you know, this is a game that took me about 6 hours to finish. It feels like something that would, you know, without like mandatory backtracking, I wondered, you know, this game is a lot smaller in scope than I was anticipating it to be. And yeah, I don't know. I don't hate it. There are definitely some. There were definitely some moments where I just was like, I'm gonna have to play through this level again, or whatever. Like I need to go back here again for like a 4th time just to find this one thing. It was kind of started to wear on me as I got kind of farther into the game. But one thing that they do that really helps, or 2 things technically. So if we go to our items, so we have inventory, dances. The dances are your different transformations, different relics you'll find, key items, whatnot. So there's kind of 2 things you can do. One, you can summon Wrench, and that will kind of take you and just give you a lift right out of the level. So if you need to return to a level at any point to find something that you're missing, you can find it real quick, get it, and then leave. And you don't have to finish the level again, which is really, really nice. So that definitely helps with some of the backtracking. Another thing that you can do is there's an ability you can get where I was mentioning how each stage is kind of split up into 3 sections. Or, I guess, you know, once you beat a stage for the first time, you don't fight the bosses again. So it's like 2 stages and then the last little ending area. But what it does is you get an ability that lets you kind of teleport between the different sections of a stage at will. And that works mostly pretty well. I think it could be a little bit better. But those two things combined really help kind of alleviate some of the not quite frustration, but some of the kind of just like I gotta go through this level a fourth time, you know, to find this thing. It helps with the backtracking for sure, and I get the sense that those things are in there for that reason of like, yeah, we know, like, you're gonna be going back to these locations quite a bit, so here's maybe a better way to handle that. So here's our first boss. You got a kind of a quick look at Risky Boots there. This is a pretty simple one. You're ringing the bell to move the cannon over so you can hit the barrel of dynamite into this creature, and you hit him a few times. It's actually one thing about this game is I don't know that I've necessarily found any of the Shantae games to be overly difficult, but I haven't found them to be easy. This game is really, really easy. And I think some of that is just in general, it's not a very difficult game. But there's also a lot of things, some of your abilities that you have can be exploited or used in such ways that make a lot of the game kind of a cakewalk. I don't really mind it too much, but it was something that stuck out because I felt like there were at least instances, particularly in Pirate's Curse towards the end, where the game did get a little challenging. In this game, it's not really any of that. So that's the first boss down. And there is, yeah, so that's Risky Boots. If you are unfamiliar with Shantae, Risky Boots is kind of this evil pirate. She's kind of positioned as your rival in some ways. But more often than not, she is up to no good. And Shantae is usually the one that needs to stop her. Also, man, I really love the idle animations in this game. Something I really just like about Shantae is there's a lot of personality. That's very true of Half-Genie Hero, as well as has been the case in past Shantae games. Just like animation-wise, like I really like just kind of the dancing stuff like that. Like that stuff it's well animated, for one. But you know, especially in a game like this where it's definitely it's the best looking game in the series. It's just, there's a lot of personality here and a lot of style, and I think it works really well. And it's also like a very kind of, it's sort of whimsical in some ways. It's very like cheery, very kind of optimistic in a lot of ways. Even though sometimes, usually towards the end, it gets a little dark, but it's just fun. So we got our first transformation, the monkey. Fan favorite, maybe, I don't know. I've always liked the monkey. So you hold down triangle to do your dance, and then you switch. And so here's the monkey. And just, I mean, come on. What's there not to like about this? It's great. So the monkey can jump really high. You can also climb on walls. Eventually you get an ability. Most transformations, you eventually get another ability that you can find. So for the monkey, you can be like climbing on a wall and then jump horizontally. And you kind of get this like boosted jump towards another wall. Another one is like you get an elephant transformation that can kind of stampede forward and break through walls that way, and then eventually you get an ability to like do a ground pound and break through, you know, the ground in some different areas. Most of the transformations are used pretty well. There's a couple that I felt were pretty underutilized. There's a transformation, I guess I don't want to spoil them, but there's a couple transformations you get a little later into the game that like are only ever used a couple times, and I felt like that was kind of disappointing too. I felt like they were new transformations that allowed you to do things in Shantae you've never been able to do before, and the fact that they were only used a couple times was kind of a bummer, because I felt like they could have allowed for some interesting level design or some new puzzles that you could have done. But instead, they're hardly ever used, and I might be wrong, I don't think they're ever required either, so it's a little bit of a bummer. Here's the town mayor. So it's kind of this weird thing where, like, Shantae, even though she always saves the day, poor Scuttletown always gets attacked, and the mayor is always quick to fire her. Even though I'm not sure she ever gets paid. it's a whole ordeal. So we'll quickly just kind of look at the rest of Scuttletown. So of course we got your save point. A lot of the game is also kind of predicated on you want to talk to everybody in town. Oftentimes they'll give you hints. Like most of the time the hints are pretty direct, where you know the keywords will be highlighted or it'll be worded in such a way that makes it pretty obvious what you need to do if you are stuck. So it's pretty user friendly that way. So of course we got Sky's Hatchery. That's where your level select is. Bathhouse, so you can heal if you need to. Item shop, we can check out some of the items. A lot of this stuff kind of plays into any, you know, again, if you played Shantae before, the item shop should be very familiar to you. You got your fireball, your pike ball, storm puff, bubble, all the different upgrades and kind of magic abilities that you expect. If you buy something like the fireball, you can then buy the triple fireball to upgrade it, and things like that. You've got the backdash, which is a cool little dodge maneuver. You've got attract, draws in gems and hearts. You got metronome, increases the speed of the transformation, kind of when it switches when you have more than 4. Magic bracelet, bikini armor, increases the whipping speed of your hair, increases the damage dealt by your hair. And then warp dance is the thing I was talking about, where you could warp between different locations on any given stage, which is really useful. And so again, it's one of those things where, like, it is a very, very familiar game. There are certainly things about it that are new, but it's also, you know, it's something where I feel like Shantae could... One of the things I really liked about Pirate's Curse is that even though it was similar characters, kind of similar setup, similar structure, which is fine, having it focused on Risky's powers made for a game that played very differently. It was a very, very different game. And so having this kind of be a return to form is nice, and it plays well, and it's a fun game in its own right. It is a little disappointing that so much of it is so similar. It leans maybe a little too heavily. And but that said, it's still a really fun game. And you know, if you like Shantae, you're gonna like this probably. And I don't know, I think this is a pretty good place to start too. You know, there are 3 Shantae games now available on PlayStation platforms. So, you know, I think any of them are great places to start. You should definitely play Pirate's Curse at some point. That is probably my favorite of the 3 that I've played. But I really like all 3 of them, and I think they're all very much worth checking out if you're into these kind of 2D platformers, exploration kind of based. They're a lot of fun. WayForward does a really good job with them. And hopefully we'll see more Shantae in the future. I'm curious to see where this series goes next. But anyways, thank you for watching as always. Like I said before, the review for this game should be up around the time the video goes live. Thanks for sticking with us throughout the year. This will be one of the last things that goes up on the site before the new year. So I'll see you in 2017.